Ready? Okay, stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and with liberty and justice for all.
As a way of respecting, honoring, and creating awareness about our past, we begin our village board meetings by acknowledging that New Paltz is on the ancestral land of the Punsi, Esopus, and Lenape people. And per usual, please check out our agendas and minutes to help us add to our list of ways to support Indigenous communities.
So this is a regular village board meeting, but we asked the town board to join us. So a portion of this meeting will effectively be a joint meeting. That will be the first agenda item within our business agenda. So I'm going to make some adjustments to our consent agenda and business agenda. Under the consent agenda, I'm removing item number 4E. And we are adding item number 6 under the consent agenda. And since this agenda was published under business agenda item number 1 regarding the concept of a coterminous government, these links have been circulated, but we just made sure that they were available and publicly available for anyone who wanted to read them. So they're all in the agenda as live documents. And then item number 2 is a letter of support regarding a grant opportunity that the Margaret Wade Lewis Center will be chasing down regarding the Ann Oliver House. And then item number 2.5, I'm adding in Deputy Mayor Wojcik's going to provide us with an update regarding the Central Hudson rate case. And item number 6B, we have a resolution regarding the well project and Moriello pool. And that is it as far as any changes to the consent or business agendas. I move that we accept the agendas as modified or amended. All in favor?
Aye.
And then announcements. So I'm going to hand the microphone over to our chair, Tom Olson, in a minute. And then the other thing that we have listed here under announcements is monthly we receive an update from our county legislator, Pastor Lamina Harmon. And I spoke with Pastor Lim about the idea of we're going to commit to doing those the second Wednesday of each month. And so we will hear from Pastor Lim as far as the county ledge update later in the month, the second February, or the second Wednesday in February. And then I'm going to go ahead. So our goal tonight is Tom is going to do our annual partners and presentation update and present some awards. And then we're going to jump right into our conversation as we explore consolidation and a coterminous government with the town and village board. So that's kind of the 2 next items that we'll be chatting about this evening. So Tom, do you want to come and join us? You can sit at the table, probably. It's great.
Thank you. So I just need to do a little reorganization. First of all, I just want to thank the village board for giving us a little bit of time, and I do mean just a little bit on an evening that's got a very full agenda. I also just want to take this public moment to thank my colleagues on the Design Review Board and Historic Preservation Commission who work really hard all year just to keep things going in the village. And also to our wonderful secretary, Valerie McAllister, I think is here way in the back. Valerie's the person who keeps the glue or is the glue that holds us together. We're a bunch of volunteers who depend on her. Val, thank you so much. Just a very, very brief bit of history. The Partners in Preservation Award has been given by the village since the year 2010. So we're going well into our second decade now, and that's created a pretty long list of properties that we've acknowledged. This year, however, we're giving out 5 awards to 6 different recipients because really great things have been happening in the village to some very key properties that I'll be talking about in just a minute. And we didn't want to hold back to our usual principle of 1 to 2 awards a year because truly all 5 of these structures and 6 recipients deserve the award that's coming. And I think it's probably fair to say that in the history of this award, which goes back to, or the history of the commission, which goes back to 2001, and the award, which goes back to 2010, this has probably been the most exciting year for the cause of historic preservation and where we are with this award. We've seen really good historic preservation and really sensitive new construction this year, and we just want to make sure to acknowledge that. So I'm going to go rather quickly through each awardees and then ask them to come up and hold the plaque that we're about to give, and then at some point we'll slip away and do a photo together. And I'm going to work sort of up from the river toward Main Street, sort of following the development of New Paltz from its founding. So the first award is going to go to John Dunham Lytell and Toshiko Lytell. Please come on up, John. And with our compliments, receive this award.
Thank you very much for this recognition. I really appreciate this, and I'm very grateful.
Please, it's our pleasure.
Great.
Stand over there, and I'd just like to say a few words. John and Toshiko own 19 North Chestnut Street, a beautiful house that we've had our eye on for some time, and we've had our eye on it because it was falling into degradation in a way that was very alarming to people who care about preservation. But it's one of New Paltz's most distinctive private homes. They've restored the exterior with just incredible care to detail. They used appropriate materials. They respected the historic character of the house. They really brought a house back almost from the dead. And their restoration, I think, is just an absolutely huge win for the cause of preservation on North Chestnut Street, which is one of our most distinguished parts of the village, and for the village generally. So John and Toshiko, we are so grateful for your efforts, your good taste, your good choices, and for bringing this endangered home back into the 21st century. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for, again, this recognition. And the goal was to try and respect the building as much as possible, to restore it to its most authentic and appropriate condition that it deserved. So
Couldn't say it better myself.
So thank you very much.
Thanks indeed.
Great.
The next award is going out to Nikki Warner and Dallas Gilpin, as well as Patrick Wang, who's not able to attend, but Nikki's going to receive not 1, but 2 awards with our thanks. Thanks. And as before, I'd like to say a few words. The award specifically is for an architecturally sensitive reconstruction of 17 North Front Street and the Mexican Kitchen Restaurant, a beloved eatery in town. My comments are these: the fire that consumed their building a few years ago was really one of the saddest events for those of us who care about the village and care about its history and its architectural history. But because Nikki and Dallas and Patrick cared about the design of that old building, which by the way was landmarked, North Front Street has now gained a very attractive and historically sensitive new structure that honors the past, and at the same time, this must be a delight to hear at some level, Nikki, will function as a modern restaurant as opposed to a restaurant carved out of a very old building. So we're very thankful to the care that you took. In particular, Nikki, you were a model applicant during our various sessions as we tried to help you with that design, which frankly was very good to begin with, but we hope that by taking to heart some of our suggestions, it's an even better building. So thank you very much, indeed.
Thank you. Acknowledge Camilla Nagy, without her assistance, we could not have gotten to the finish line where we were. So she was intimately involved in the planning stages and came out to the site whenever we had questions. And without her, she's an invaluable resource to the village. So thank you.
Thank you for that. Here. So now I'm going to turn up Main Street, and our first Main Street awardees are Ed and Jill Burke. Would you like to come up? And the award reads for their architecturally sensitive restoration of the properties at 68 and 70 Main Street, right in the heart of the village. There's a little narrative here from, I guess it starts about 18 months ago or so, with a little bit of help from our committee member, George Seafree, and their very talented carpenter, Dan Vinnett. Jill and Ed completed probably the most significant restoration and renovation project on the mid part of Main Street that I've ever seen, and I've lived in the community close on 30 years. Looking at that building now, you would never have guessed that this mixed-use building of residential and commercial was once looking quite forlorn, really kind of down in the mouth, wasn't adding much to the streetscape of Main Street, but now what's there is an absolute gem of restoration using, again, high quality materials. Dan, thanks to you, very high quality finishing work and finishings, and a building that we hope is going to set kind of a new standard and give a new model for what restoration in the mid part of the Main Street area can mean. We're very grateful to both of you, to all three of you, and to George for bringing this about, because I really do think that we're looking at a new possibility in the mid part of the downtown district. Thank you so much indeed.
It was an undertaking that I couldn't have done without the help of your committee, with George and especially Dan. I mean, if you watch that project, it went a lot longer than I thought it was going to go, but it wasn't because it was Dan was so meticulous, and every time he said, what, that's a good idea, but we should do it this way. And I'm so thankful that your expertise and your love for what you do. I mean, that building looks the way it does because of Dan's, attention to detail. And thank you. We were happy to be part of this community and continue to help it improve with all the other recipients tonight. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're just going to go a little bit further up Main Street. And speaking of quality restorations and new gems of our downtown area, Gina O'Brien Carroll and Ed Carroll are going to be receiving the next award. Would you like to come on up? Yes, it is. Yours now.
I'd like to ask the architect, Alan Ross, to join.
Absolutely.
Can the minute show he's one of the few people that looks good in orange? I think like
Blue and orange. There's some campus thing going on. As you might have guessed, I'm talking about the Lemon Squeeze Piano Bar and Restaurant. The award is for your historically sensitive reconstruction of the Lemon Squeeze Piano Bar and Restaurant. We're delighted to honor you, Gina and Ed. You transformed a familiar but frankly pretty rundown establishment, an establishment many of us darkened the door of in our time, into a beautiful piano bar and restaurant with one of New Paltz's best outdoor seating areas. If you've not had a look behind the structure, a delight waits you. With their architect, Alan Ross, who was not going to escape my notice, they created a historically sensitive top to bottom renovation. Really almost everything was changed except a few wonderful details. And they did it using very high quality materials, something that I call out on many of these projects. Is a lot of what this is about is choosing good materials. And as they did, also working in the architectural language of what's around it. And that's something that Alan, Gina, and Ed did very well. The structure honors the neighborhood. And it, to my mind, looks so good and works so well that somebody from out of town would be excused from believing that the lemon squeeze has just always been in New Paltz, because it fits in so well and so beautifully and is such a fun place to be. So thank you again so much indeed. Yeah, people can make these memories.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of fun. Thank you so much
you very
indeed.
much.
Please stick around. We'll do a photo. Last but not least, I'd like John Joseph to come on up. John represents Southern Realty and Development at 119 and 121, or 119 and 121 Main Street. John, thank you so much for being here. Here too, the commission is awarding this for an architecturally sensitive restoration at 119 and 121 Main Street. Here's what's distinctive about this award. Even before the restoration began, John got in touch with the Historic Preservation Commission, came to us with ideas, sought out information on what the building once looked like, asked for photos, whatever we had archivally or could help him find. And all of that worked beautifully. The result is another Main Street gem, kind of brought back from the dead or the near dead. It was a building that had some unfortunate treatments on the outside. And what it looks like now is exactly what a modern restoration should do. It looks the part, it looks like it fits into the neighborhood. It functions as a modern building and facility. And John, we especially appreciate that you took your time with this renovation, choosing the right materials, waiting for the right carpenters and contractors just to get the thing right. And it looks that way. And you presented the village with yet another beautifully restored mixed-use property. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you. We're happy to be here. We really are. Looking forward to doing more.
Wonderful. Thank you. Village board members, thank you for the time. We will slip away and do a photo, but we really appreciate the occasion and the opportunity.
Thanks,
Thank
Tom.
you so much.
Thanks, Historic Preservation Commission, Design Review Board. Are you guys stepping out? So everyone's welcome to stay for this conversation, but if anyone wants to leave, just because that can be noisy or. Okay. You're allowed back in, Lauren.
We're going to do a quick photo so that we don't disturb.
Okay. So we have a public comment on our agenda this evening, and I'm going to suggest that we have 2 public comments tonight. If anyone wants to make a public comment about our conversation regarding consolidation and a coterminous town village, you're welcome to do that now. And then at any other topic, let's do that after the town board and village board has their conversation. So I know Supervisor Emeritus Lentz, you were interested in making a comment. Do you want to come sit at the table and join us and share your comment?
Yeah, no, that's all right.
That's great. Standing up's fine.
I suspect many of you here don't remember me, and that's fine too. But I'd like to tell you a little bit of my experience here in New Paltz. I came in 1933. The parents came. We moved into the whole farmhouse across from what is now ShopRite, and we ran that farm. It's 125 acres at the time, and until it was finally farming was no longer a successful operation, and we finally got rid of it. I don't know, late 80s or so. I came through the campus school. At the time, it went through 9th grade. at the time, the district was really the envy of the rest of the county because the college proceeded to take care of the first 9 grades at their expense. And then the taxpayers only paid for 3 years of high school. My experience after that was that I went to college, proceeded to go in the Army for a couple of years, and then came back to New Paltz in the '55, was married, and have lived here ever since. I've seen a lot of things happen in the town and happened in the village, and some of the things that I'm particularly concerned about is that when I was growing up, the campus, the college was a small college. And it only extended from what is the campus school at the end of Hasbrook, eastern side of Hasbrook Park, up to what is maybe a little bit east of South, well, 2nd Street up. And and it was only, as I say, 2 buildings. It took care of all the education of the first 9 grades. And it lasted that way until after World War II. And then gradually, as the number of students increased from maybe in the 250 or 300 students. In fact, I can remember when I was in junior high school, and it was the middle of World War II, that the college had exactly 8 men college. And my experience afterward of being involved in the community, also had the opportunity, to be honored of being a supervisor, 1990 to 95, and then a county representative for one term, and I didn't like that job and left it, and since been retired, completely retired. However, in reading the recent proposals and the recent discussion about a coterminous village becomes a city, I have severe reservations and also concerns. I appreciate what Mayor Rogers has done in getting additional help from the state, but the roads and the property was divided outside the village as if it was going to be a town. Large lawns, spaces, it's not a village. And the impact of suddenly having to make it a whole village has one big problem, and that is, at least the startup problem, is availability of water. You'll be responsible to extend water lines for the rest of the quote unquote city as requested. Well, I'll tell you something. I don't is sure New York City is gonna be too happy about doing that. And you do not have enough supply up on the mountain. to Handle additional water supply. And by the way, they've tried to drill water, to get water out of the flats, that didn't work. So that's one major problem. The other problem is that being now a city, you're required to do some more extensive provisions of town situations, so things that supplying water, extending water lines, extending sewer lines, all of which test the system. And I don't think that it is a desirable reason, and I appreciate the mayor's consideration and understand why it is, but still, I don't think it's desirable, and thank you very much for the time.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lent. Anyone else want to make a public comment? Yeah, come sit or stand just closer to the microphone.
Good evening. My name is Robert Feldman. It's kind of like deja vu all over again, listening to Dave speak. I moved to New Paltz in about 1990. And as soon as I got to the village, hi Kitty, there was an immediate movement to dissolve the village. And it was probably the closest that we ever came to that happening in New Paltz since I've been here in the 30+ years. I came here because I love the village. So I lived on Manheim at the time. And now I actually live in the town across the street from the village. So when looking at it, the dissolution was just a bad written prospect. It was just a poorly thought out concept, and it was just really creating a division between, and it was taking sides. You had Tom, I was reviewing this with my wife earlier, and I kept saying, and they should rest in peace. How many of these people, unfortunately, are gone now? But Tom and Bob Hebel were at odds, and Laura Zeisel was on the board. It was just splitting things up. And this is, I was complaining, nobody was getting along. And I had recently been appointed to the board, and I was deputy mayor. And Dave told me I needed to grow thicker skin if I was going to survive in New Paltz politics. So I don't know if I ever did grow the thicker skin, but the dissolution failed. And this prompted Tom Nyquist and I to really dig into a solution. And honestly, you know, the town was never very supportive. They didn't, as you see, Dave doesn't see it. And, you know, we talked about dissolving, we talked about being a city, which on paper looked the best, but the stigma of city just wasn't going to fly, and getting it passed through the state legislature was never going to fly. We hired consultants. We did, you know, it's funny, history does repeat itself. I think you mentioned that, and recently, everything you're doing, we did back then. We hired the lawyers and we went to the meetings and we did all of it, and coterminous is great. It is by far the solution that we believed in, and we tried, but it never happened because it seemed as though it became a personal thing, and there was this competition that developed between the boards and who was going to maybe lose a job and who wasn't going to lose a job. But, you know, it's the form of government that was going to make the difference. And I actually believed, as many did, that the village form of government is a better form of government than the town form of government. And for that reason, we felt that it was the right way to go. So I wish you a lot of luck, because it's going to take a lot. And I do feel that if the town isn't on board, you're just wasting your time. And I know you have long agendas. I'm so glad I get to go home after this conversation, because I remember how many Wednesday night things I used to miss on TV. It's funny because you walk in, you think, oh, this is going to be a short meeting. Everyone's going to agree on the 2 items on the agenda, and then you're there until 11 o'clock at night, right? So if there's any need for help on any of this, I'd be happy to help, because we did do a lot of work on this. And I hope you can approach it with an open mind, and not so much about territorial issues, but more about efficiency. And it's not always about saving money either. It's about perhaps providing better services, and limited resources by pooling that really can go a long ways, because it's hard, as you know, to get people to belong to all the different boards and so on. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to make a public comment?
Good evening. My name is Lou Carriola. I'm from the town of New Paltz. I really just have questions. And my questions are, I understand that it'd be consolidated as one board for both. With regards to the zoning board, there's going to be one zoning board? Planning board, just one. I believe there's diverse kind of zoning in the town versus the village. Likewise, a planning board to deal with the same thing. 2 completely different entities. I personally believe that's a difficult job for a single board, for a zoning board, and for a planning board to do the size of mostly the community here, the village, and add that to the town, and one single board for each one, I think is a difficult thing to do. So with that in mind, I don't think it's a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you.
Who else would like to make a comment? Dr. Zeeler.
I do agree with what Lou just said, but I'm decided at this point it's premature to talk about implementation issues. So I'd like to talk about process issues. And I have sort of 3 points. The first one is, having read all the materials that you have out, it isn't clear to me what the problem is that you're hoping to fix. And I think in educating the public, which is sort of the underlying theme of everything I want to say, the first thing you should do is articulate, is there a problem? Is there something that you need to fix, or is there a way to do things better, which is something you've alluded to? And in that respect, then what are all the options that you might use to approach that? And then why is this particular solution the best? I think the public needs to understand all that. Specifically from the resolution and from what I read recently on the New York State Department of State website about coterminous, it looks like what you're proposing to do is an annexation. There might be a different mechanism, but so I don't, based on what they have, it isn't clear to me exactly what the proposal is to extend what's the mechanism you're going to use to extend the village boundaries out so they're coterminous with the town. Their particular Department of State has multiple ways that it's been done. And as you referenced, there are 5 coterminous town villages in New York State. They've used a variety of different mechanisms, none of which look like what you're proposing to do exactly. So again, there should be some clarity there. The third point is the resolution's timeline, as I look at it, is much too short and mostly leaves out any community input other than a couple of required public hearings. It seems unreasonable to try to have all of this work done in basically 6 months, August 2024, and a referendum in November. I would suggest that you consider, before you expend any local and state monies, that you consider holding a series of facilitated public conversations, not public hearings, in which you really explain what this process is and what the pros and cons are for people, not just fiscally, but in terms of efficiency, begin to really address some of the implementation issues. And importantly, make sure that the public has a lot of opportunity to provide input into what's going on here. The previous examples, as Robert Feldman alluded to, created a lot of animosity and misunderstanding because, in part, the public was not invested in the process. And if you don't do that, even if it succeeds, it will be under not the best of circumstances. So I would ask that you consider that before you vote on this resolution, or amend this resolution to consider those points. The final point in the resolution is, it looks to me like all of the discussion about implementation wouldn't happen until after a referendum. And again, I would argue that as an individual resident here, I would absolutely vote no if I didn't understand what this meant for the workforce in the town and the village, what it meant for the volunteer boards in the town and the village, as well as all of the other fiscal issues. And so I would ask that you slow this process down and really think carefully about making sure the public is on board before we go forth with spending money. Thanks.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Public comment? Dr. Koenig? Probably, don't you have several?
Nikki Nielsen, I have been a resident of the area for the better part of my life, and graduate of New Paltz High School, and never a resident of the village. But from 2003 until probably 2009, I was the village and the town's grants writer. And so I know that this is one of the hardest local community problems to solve, and the arguments here are not new. But that being said, I think everything here is valid. Timeline and the difficulty of engaging the public is a real issue, as is the ability to quantify how this is an improvement. But I do think it's important to try again, because the duplication of boundaries right now is becoming more and more blurred, and the burden on having 2 boards and 2 sets of volunteers and 2 sets of taxes for village taxpayers and is a lot. So structuring the conversations in a way that thinks outside of the box and helps people to move beyond kind of those historical arguments. When I looked at this, I want to say 2008, we brought up the discussions from the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, 90s into the fact that it's a conversation we keep having. And at some point, we don't want the decision to be made by people who don't live here or have other agendas. So really engaging the community and having honest conversations about, yes, it may not save money. Yes, you may need multiple duplication for a period of time, but I do think if you think creatively about it, there is a possibility for a new structure that works better for the residents that live here.
Anybody else? Tom Denton, you're online. Do you want to make a comment?
Yes, yes. I don't have an opinion on this yet. I just want to hear the arguments. And I would be terribly disappointed if that discussion got shut down. I want to echo the comment about process. Another reason why I think this is interesting at the least is this is an issue that could wake up the town and the village a bit. I think that would be healthy to have people come out and engage in this very serious issue. We have other issues to deal with, namely housing. Some of you know I'm on the housing committee, and I want to see people of New Paltz Village and town engaged. So let's get started. Thank you.
Maya Perjansky.
Maya Perjansky, thank you all for being here tonight. I think I don't have a prepared long thing. I think what I want to say is that there's a reason why it's been coming up in the 50s, 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, likely. And as people have said before me, kind of laying that out and putting that out. I don't know, you all would know better than I do how our population has grown and changed over the years. And yet, so I think that question of needing to educate people is really important. I think there's another piece, which is with the growth to our community. I can't tell you how often I hear from people who are new to the community. I don't even know who to reach out to. I don't know where town hall is. I don't know which is the village. They don't know. And I think that is a problem that on some level we do need to address in some way. I think when I think personally, I grew up in the village, I live in the town. I want to retire here, and I know that people can't always afford to anymore. The taxes are high, and so if there is a cost savings as part of this plan, and I know that's not the only reason for it, I think it's important that we find it so that the people who've grown up here and raised their families here can stay here and don't have to leave. So I think that that's a piece of why we need to look at it. I don't think I need to take more time. I think that's just it. I would really like us to move forward and look at this. That's my hope.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to make a public comment?
Tim, I'd like to comment.
Who is that?
Paul Brown.
Okay, say Paul Brown, go ahead.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks for stimulating our thinking. I appreciate the service of both the village and the board members. I think you all know that. I think I heard, I want to say that I'm disappointed. I thought we'd have about 100 people here on Zoom. I don't see that many, but I did try to follow the initial lead links to the Zoom, and it didn't work. So I had to go to the village website and click the most current link. Small point, but I want to say to this board that I respect what you're doing. I'm excited to hear that people want to wake up the community. We do need to have a community both in the village and the town that speaks up and speaks out and gets involved, but without information, they can do nothing. I am concerned that some of the people who are already our elected officials that I respect and admire have already concluded that an outcome is inevitable. That is a dangerous place to start a decision-making process. I am very concerned that the process be one that the entire community, all 15,000 of us who are residents and taxpayers and rent payers here, however many we live are, be proud of the process. I've already mentioned that there are 533 villages. Why have so few taken this route? Why only 5? We need to have a thorough problem-solving approach to this, of vetting, who's going to pay for it, how's it going to be paid for. But I do think the process can be what we're proud of. But it must be driven by the frequently asked questions of the citizenry. And so I will be looking for a methodology where any consultants you hire and whoever volunteers to work on this responds to every single question of all the people who live here. And if it's driven by answering questions and gathering information and gaining understanding before you come to a judgment, then we will be proud of it. And I'm myself, as some others have mentioned here, I'm not worried about the outcome. I am deeply worried by the process. The history of the village and the town is that the people who were in charge at that time, our elected officials and appointed committee members, weren't really listening. And the history records that. We don't want to be ignorant of that history. But I thank you for your efforts. I know how thankless it can be. And also, I want to mention that I watch almost every village and town meeting. And I'm one of the 3 or 4 other people who do, at least according to YouTube and how it works. So if more people start watching, but don't think because we're not watching YouTube or we don't show up on a cold night, I'm 81 years old, we don't care about you as people who have been elected, but given the salaries you make, it's like volunteering. But we are watching, we're concerned, and we're ready to help. Thank you for letting me comment.
Thanks, Paul. Any other comments? Okay. So I can jump in and just kind of describe where we are right now. So we have circulated a draft 1-pager that's like 20,000 feet in terms of outlining ideas that could be considered by the town and village boards. There's also a resolution that was drafted where if we decide that we want to go ahead and ask New York State for some grant money to help us explore this idea, we need that resolution to officially ask the state. And then there's another memorializing resolution, which was crafted basically to just outline the process. And I appreciate that the timeline feels ambitious. We are in no way handcuffed to any sort of timeline whatsoever. It really was just expressed to illustrate, like, these are the steps. This is what you have to do, right? If we could wave a magic wand and we ended up with a updated fair weather study as well as a reorganization plan by May or June, and I'm not predicting that that would happen, you would then, next step, have a public hearing for the public to chew on that reorg proposal. And then the 2 boards would say, well, this is what we like or appreciate from the public hearing comments, and we would update that reorg plan. And then the next step would involve creating a consolidation agreement, which would also include the town board and village board saying, yes, and we would like to vote on this. It might make sense to have a vote in November or at some other point. The advantage of doing a general election is then you end up with more people participating as opposed to a special election. Like, what, you know, I would be really excited if the community became incredibly interested in this, and we weren't fearful that if we had a special election, that we wouldn't get a ton of participation. Maybe we would. But I can quickly answer some of the concerns that were raised. So, Mr. Lent, you brought up the concern about if we have a town village-wide coterminous government, that we would need to extend water and sewer throughout that new single entity. That is not at all how this would work. The way it would work is that, and this is what I think is actually truly unique and special about a coterminous town-wide village, is that effectively you can take the good things about a town and the good things about a village to create a new village government. So a village cannot create special districts, a town can. So what you can do is you can have a town create a village water and sewer district, and then the town could continue to have its existing water and sewer districts with their existing siloed debts that each of those, the village water fund has a bunch of debt in it right now. So if we were to pursue, this consolidation, those people who are served within that area would continue to be responsible for that debt. That debt would not be the responsibility of others in the community. So that's an advantage of this coterminus. And I also appreciate this idea that, yes, we've discussed this before. However, this is a moving target. Many things have changed since this has been discovered in the past. The legislation that allows a community to pursue a coterminous consolidated government was only enacted in 2011, where you would then be eligible for the maximum award of $1 million via the Community Empowerment Act. So you would end up with the Community Empowerment Tax Credit because of our combined tax levies are well north of $6.7 million per year. And that's a tax credit that would be made available to this new entity in perpetuity. And of course, there's always a risk that that could go away. There's also a risk that school aid could go away. There's a risk that CHIPS can go away. There's a risk that AIM can go away. So, this is memorialized in law right now. There are other communities that currently receive this CETC. The other thing that I think is super important to highlight is, yes, there are coterminous communities in New York State. I think there are a total of 5. There has never been a consolidation of municipalities in New York State where you ended up with a coterminous government under Article 17A, where you could end up with the CETC. So we would effectively be the first if we do this. And I think what's super interesting about our opportunity is that we are so incredibly close to doing this. So New Paltz has done a lot of the things already as far as the ideas that have been expressed previously by previous administrations, including what's been articulated in the Fairweather report. We have a shared court, we have a shared assessor, we have a shared PD, we have a shared fire department. We don't have fire districts. We are so close. And of course, this will be difficult. Of course, we can't assume anything and that we should do this absolutely right now. And we need an engaged citizenry to comment and be thoughtful about this project. But what's very unique and why the other 500 or so villages in New York State haven't done this is because they are in much more complicated situations than we are. There are many towns in this state that have more than one village. There are towns in this state that have villages that straddle 2 different town boundaries. There are towns that have fire districts. There are so many layers of complication that exist in other communities that we do not have. And a lot of that is because of the work that our elected officials have been doing. And even in the last decade, the town and the village worked together to construct a new fire station, right? So we have all this square footage at this campus now that's available. The town board focused on addressing the need for a new court, and they got out of the leased police station, right? Those are dominoes that needed to fall. They fell. Now we have a situation where we have a very unique opportunity to take advantage of the fact that we've kind of teed up this situation. And then Michael, you were asking about the implementation plan and how you would be concerned about a referendum if you didn't have so there's so much jargon in all of this. And one of the things that I'm really trying to do and to try to help all of us chew on this idea before anyone jumps to any conclusions is get a lot of that vernacular and jargon dialed in before we continue this conversation. So the way this works is that we have this resolution, if we decide to do it, that we would ask the Department of State program for some grant assistance. That grant assistance would then help us update the study from 2011. Additionally, it would help us articulate a reorganization plan, part of that reorganization plan. And I agree with you, probably the heaviest thing that our unique community would have to address is figuring out how you empower and provide resources to a single planning board and a single zoning board of appeals. That is probably the most difficult thing that we would have to do. But I also believe, having done this job for going on 9 years now, that it's probably the thing that we are weakest at right now. So we recently had a building department official leave, and it really forced us within the village to take a closer look at our entire process. Like when someone shows up with an application because they want to build something, an apartment complex, whatever, like we're not Mayberry anymore. You could have building department officials in the past who could take a idea and ask a building department official to review it. And they could be like, oh, zoning determination is this, you can do it or you can't do it. Should this be escalated so that the planning board should review it? Like that stuff was all very different and easier to figure out. And now we have fairly sophisticated developers trying to secure grant money to build affordable housing. We have very different projects that really require a very different approach to local government than what we've been doing. And I wholeheartedly believe if you took, for instance, the staff in the town building department and the staff in the village building department, including the people who planning and zoning, and put them together and get them to work together and really come up with a much more robust process so that when developers show up, you know, this is how this works. You end up with a memo after the zoning determination is done, after the consultants have reviewed it. So we could actually make things better and easier for our planning board volunteers. Because what I feel happens, and we've even, you know, even as recently as a couple of weeks ago, we're like, we should probably do a better job of making sure that we have consultants with engineering experience like at the board table, or making sure that they come to our meetings to really empower and support these volunteers before they make decisions. I feel like that's really what we're kind of falling short on right now. And I see that as an opportunity, and I'm definitely not signing off on that. This is the absolute only path that we should pursue. But what I'm seeing is that we need to take a really hard look at this. And you know, Paul Brown already circulated in Paul Brown fashion 999 questions about like how this will work. And I've already dumped it into a Google Doc, and I've already started answering some of those questions. And I'm sure our colleagues on the town board and village board will populate that document with answers to Paul's questions. And what we want to do is like take documents like that and have it end up being like our FAQ. Like that is the document, or other documents like that. So all of us as elected officials can wrap our heads around it. The community can wrap our heads around it. And so the idea is that if you get this grant money and you perform the study and you write that reorganization plan, and I'm intentionally not using the word implementation plan because I've heard other folks, including those at the Department of State, use the word on both sides of the referendum, and I will not use the word implementation, even though what we're trying to do is to write an implementation plan prior to the referendum, because you want the community to read that plan. You want the community to understand the nuts and bolts of what this new single entity will do. And then if the referendum is successful, then you would ask for more assistance from the Department of State to write or to do the implementation and to write that. And that's really more of like the boring, cold stuff that the accountants and attorneys will do. They will basically take that reorganization plan and implement it, right? So they're not, it's not like we're going to design the government after the referendum. We're going to design the government before the referendum. So the implementation plan, if the referendum is successful, is really just the nuts and bolts thing. And like, what's really confusing about all of this is we're intentionally talking about a board initiated process. So what I've just described is a board initiated process. There's a whole other path that a community like ours, and this was done in Pauling very recently, where you could do a citizen initiated process. So that's where you go and you collect a bunch of signatures, and then you basically force the town and village board to hold a referendum because you have X number of signatures. So that's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here is a much more measured approach, because what's super interesting about that citizen initiated approach is that if a certain number of signatures are collected outside the village and within the village, and then those are presented to our boards, then we're required within certain timeframes to have referendums. So that's not what we're doing here. So even though this proposed concept of a board initiated, we are not handcuffed or limited to that idea of like, okay, we got to write this reorg plan by May so the community can chew on it in June. Then we have the public hearings in July, and then we ask the county board of elections to put it on the referendum by August 1st. Like, that is how it could happen if like every single star aligns, and we all know that's not how humans or mammals work. But that we have to like explain where the goalposts are, and that's what we're doing. So I've talked a lot, so I'll let any of the board members chew on this now. And then I also asked Ben Seiden from LaBerge to join us. So also part of this project is that we like, if we decide that we want to go forward with this, and we decide that we want to ask the Department of State for assistance, we would issue an RFQ to the handful of consultants in the state who have experience with this. One of them is LaBerge. I've been talking to those guys. I've talked to other consultants in this space, and then we would decide via our respective village and town procurement policies who we would end up choosing if this is the route that we want to go down. But I did ask Ben to join us. I'm assuming he's on this call. So after we chat, okay, so after we chat for a bit, I'm going to ask Ben to provide some additional context. So
you did a great job, Mayor. You provided a lot of information already about the process.
Perfect, thanks. Before we ask you to chime in and tell us like how much fun this experience could involve, I'm going to ask our town board colleagues. So Essie's on the town board. You're totally allowed to sit there and come up as needed. But I'm opening it up.
Yeah, I just want to say, it was really great hearing all the comments made tonight so far, because they definitely reflected conversation I had last week, catching up with my old friend Amanda Sissenstein, who moved away because of the housing crisis, but had all sorts of memories that came up, you know, of the last time this discussion came up and whatnot. And she was like, it would be really cool to see this discussion happen in a productive manner, you know, this time around, because it keeps coming up for some sort of reason, you know. So just wanted to point out that people who don't even live here anymore want to see us see this through maybe in a constructive way.
Well, I'll say I thank the mayor for bringing this up. I think it's a good thing, and I think we owe the taxpayers this discussion. And because it's going to come up. It's come up multiple times. And if we don't do it the right way, it's going to come up and it's going to be citizen driven. And then it's not going to be based on facts and data. And so I think it's a very good idea to try to get state money and do the study. Right. I'm very supportive of that. I also agree with what a lot of the comments are. The voters, eventually they decide. Our job is to give them all of the information they need so they can make an informed decision. And so I am very supportive of us getting a grant and updating these studies and making sure that when the voters do go to the ballot, they're basing their decision not on, arguments or personalities, but on what the facts are. And so I think it's a really good idea. I think the timeline might be tight, but give it a try, right? I hopefully we can work together on this, but I want to make sure that the last time this process took years, hopefully it doesn't take that long because we're only updating a report, not writing a whole new report. So that's kind of my comment. Let's do this, but let's make sure we follow the process and we make sure that the public is involved. I know it's going to open a can of worms, but I do think it's important that they're involved. And yes, they start coming to board meetings and we do this because eventually it's going to happen. Maybe not this time, maybe not next time, but we've been doing some of these things, like the mayor said, already for a long time. And I think we have to keep doing things like this, but I would love to base what we do on a study done by professionals. And so I'm looking forward to hearing from them and looking forward to the results of the study. So we can actually have a conversation and that the voters can read or be told with presentations what we find.
I'll just say, I don't have a lot to add to what Neil said. I agree with what Neil said. I'm very much in favor of pursuing the exploration with a professional and getting the grant money to do that. The timeline does seem tight to me. I definitely would love to hear from, this is big, so I wouldn't want people, to feel like they didn't have enough time. And of course, then if we, let's say, both boards were in favor of it and then it didn't pass, it might feel really frustrating knowing that maybe it's because there wasn't enough time for the rollout of information. My biggest, interest really is in the tax implications of what this would mean for residents. So I'm really curious to see, if this could result in tax relief for, our residents. I completely agree with you that people should be able to stay in this town if they want to, especially if they grew up here. It's a really special place, and more, it's getting more and more difficult to do that. We have a huge housing crisis, and if we can, I do believe, thinking of it as a single entity, feels right. So because there doesn't need to be that division. New Paltz is New Paltz. And I do also I echo the concerns that one of the citizens mentioned, it was Lou, right? About the planning board and the zoning board. That's an incredibly huge undertaking to have so much on their plate. And I'd love to examine that and see how we can do that better. I think we can do that better already. And if this could be something that we really examine so that we just give them, our town the best opportunity to grow in a smart way.
I see that Kitty,
Kitty, you want to share something?
Yeah, hi, everybody. Oh, let's let Essie talk first.
I was gonna let you talk, but since you're giving me the floor, hi, everyone.
Okay.
In the interest of time, I just want to say, I think we absolutely owe it to our constituents to consider it. I think it's long overdue, and just that we need to really be mindful and thoughtful and make sure that the community really understands, the implications. And so I'm for it, but to do it in the right time frame, taking our time, and all that thoughtfulness is what I think is really important. I think it is a great opportunity. I think that the pooling of resources could be really beneficial, but I just want to make sure that the community has the opportunity to understand and to give their opinions, and that they feel that it was a thoughtful and thorough process.
We're gonna just keep it within the board. Anybody else? So we can also Kitty, you want to go ahead? Go ahead.
Yeah, hi. First of all, it was so great to see my generation back, Paul Brown and Dave Lent. who were, and, you know, I think Dave was on the finance committee when we did this 10 years ago. And Bob Feldman, it's just great to see people coming back into the conversation. Michael Zeeler asked, you know, what are the problems we want to solve? And I think what has been something that I've been concerned about for a while is that we need a planner. We need a planner for both the town and the village. And it's a lot of money for one municipality. And it's one reason that we never adopted that 2011 comprehensive plan, was that we had the town coming at it and the village coming at it, but we didn't have one person that we were paying to coordinate it. And I think as we look especially at the housing crisis, you know, I know it's going to take years, but if we can look down the road and see that we can have a planner who is looking at our whole community and where we can put housing, I think that would be a huge step forward. And I know Jackie Brownstein is here to talk about trying to support your motion to raise the percentage to 20% of affordable housing in large developments. So I don't know if she's going to get a chance to talk about that later. But unfortunately, we recorded lots and lots. I mean, as you say, years worth of meetings. I was on the steering committee the last time we went around this, but we recorded them on VHS tapes and they are gone. They were stored for a little while in the community center. I don't know what happened to them. We had several community charrettes, I think they call them charrettes, with the planning company that we hired to do that plan that never got adopted. They're gone. They don't exist. But I'm hopeful that we can find the minutes from some of those meetings, because we had a lot of the same questions that have been asked tonight then. And I think that it's important to see how engaged the community was then, and to harness that energy, and let's use that to explore this again.
Do we want to hear from, we can all chime in again, but do we want to hear from Ben? Ben, do you want to give us tell us about consolidation in New York State, what's involved, give us your take on what we're discussing.
Sure. I mean, normally I can give hours on government reorganization, but understanding that you've already been talking for an hour, and first I want to say I'm very encouraged by both the village and the town boards and by the public at large to be open to the conversation of government reorganization. So the mayor mentioned back in 2010, New York State created the Citizen Empowerment and Reorganization Act, which allowed for a change in how citizens and governments can look at their future governance with a C, not with governments as in TS. In Article 17A, it allows you to look at consolidation. Consolidation is in a process in where both the village and the town, or any other special districts in the state, can work together to form a new government. And this allows both the village residents and the town residents, the village government and town government, to be equal partners in developing a plan of action. That plan of action is called a consolidation agreement. It's how you're going to be providing those services to your residents. That includes what you already share, police, fire, assessment, and the court, and also land use going forward. It allows you to dictate how a joint zoning ordinance would look. It allows you to detail out how special districts would be created. It allows you to detail how the government will be elected and the services they will provide. But it's not a high-level study. In developing a consolidation agreement, you are putting forth a plan of action for how you will run this new government. And in doing so, it allows you to go through a process. Now, Mayor, you detailed out two different things. You spoke about board initiated and citizen initiated. And I want to start with the citizen initiated because it's really a very tough process whereby a petition is provided, it is certified. The boards, in this case, both the village and town, would have to hold a meeting within 30 days to set a referendum, and then boom, you have a referendum in 60 to 90 days. And the supervisor mentioned that there's not always a lot of information. And I like to say that in a citizen-initiated process, without a good plan, you're voting on the heartstrings or the purse strings because you don't have that information. Where in a board-initiated process, you don't have a locked-in time frame. It allows you to have that public dialogue. It allows both the town and the village to jointly craft a consolidation agreement, which is built upon, in your case, the original Fairweather report, and expanded into how you want to run that government, this new government that's yet to be formed. And in that process, you have the public dialogue. Kitty, you mentioned charrettes in the planning process. It's like that, but it allows you to detail out a very interactive public participation process. And whomever you decide to use should have an FAQ webpage so that the public has questions and they can be answered. And there's one source of information. You know, social media in this case is great because I'm zooming in, but social media on Facebook or other venues allow for keyboard warriors to throw in bombs. So whoever you use should have an FAQ page so that people have real answers. Although the answers that the public wants can't be responded to until you do that plan, until you together come up with that new government structure. And then you can have those public dialogue, the conversations, the answers to the questions. And then in the consolidation process, what's different than the citizen initiative is you then first create the agreement. You have that public dialogue in creating it. You both, the town and the village board, would accept that agreement once you're ready. Then you have a public hearing. At that point, you have the decision of whether or not you want to go forward and actually have that referendum. It's not required. Whereas the mayor mentioned on the citizen initiative, boom, you have the requirement to have that referendum. In a board initiated process, you have that timeline and that opportunity to create that new government, have that public conversation, have that public hearing, take that feedback from the public, edit, if necessary, that document, and then make that decision to go forward and have the referendum. So it allows you to have a very thorough process in a non-time pressured situation, and you can create that new government. In Pauling, we had a citizen-initiated process. So it was a very fast, you have the referendum, you have the certification, and then you had 60 to 90 days. In this case, we used the entire 90 days to create an interim consolidation report, and both the village and town then had a chance to vote on it. But that wasn't in an agreement. That was a very high-level study like your Fairweather report. In your case, if you choose to go forward and do a board-initiated process, you will then create a very detailed and thorough, what they call a consolidation agreement, detailing how every service will be provided, what that cost is going to be, where that share is going to be, where the employees are going to be, and what that impact on taxpayers is going to be. And in that, you'll also account for that citizen empowerment tax credit that the mayor mentioned, which will be $1 million a year. Just as a point of information, 70% of that $1 million by law is required to go to lower your tax levy. The other 30% can go into your budget for other budgetary needs. So when you develop your consolidation agreement and you look at that tax impact, you would look at what that tax impact is with 70% of the funds going to lower the taxes up to the full 100%. It gives you a guideline for how to move forward. And that's just procedurally, you would start the process by passing your board resolutions. You would apply to the Department of State for their citizen reorganization and empowerment grant. Then begin your process for however long it takes you to go forward. Then you accept your plan. You have a process and a time frame for your public hearing. Upon that, you have 60 to 90 days to edit your plan. And then should you choose to have the referendum, you set that date. And then you also have to have a summary of that plan posted in your newspaper for 4 consecutive weeks prior to that referendum. So there is a process and a timeline set forth.
Yep. So the board initiated gives us flexibility.
It gives
Dave,
you
you see-
flexibility and it gives you the control of the process. That
We're not
flexibility
gonna-
is huge.
Thanks. We're not going to do a whole lot of back and forth. If you have a quick comment,
Quick thing, okay. I think that one of the situations that has not been mentioned tonight, which is really the elephant in the room, is SUNY New Paltz and the impact on communities.
great. Any other thoughts from town or village board members? Questions for Ben while he's here?
I have a question that I didn't think of before the meeting, but with like election cycles changing, would that impact possible years that this could happen? With all the local elections, does Ben know?
So the new elections will begin after 2025, but your referendum happens when you're ready for the referendum. In your consolidation agreement, you'll detail out the ascension and the election processes for your new elected officials. But all elected officials at local levels after 25 will be done on even years. It all depends on when you decide. In a consolidation, a board initiated process or a citizen initiated process, after 2010, you control when that date is. So you can decide whether that's December 31st, March 31st, May 31st. The decision of that date, though, is key in that the reorganization has to occur before the next state fiscal year starts in order to get your tax credit in September. So on a calendar, you would have to reorganize by March 31st of any given year to get your tax credit September 15th. So when you do your consolidation, you'll pick a date far enough in advance that allows you to reorganize, close out accounts, create accounts, do the map plan reports, transfer the employees, so as to not just basically turn off the lights and hand over the keys. So you have to plan that. Not to put a pun on or play on words, but it's a process in where planners plan out the new government structure and the timeline so that the implementation is as seamless as can be.
Neil, were you going to add something about the elections?
So it's not until, like you said, 2025. So if under the timeline that was initially laid out, where this would go on the ballot in November, both boards would stick around for one more year. What would happen, I think they would all be then elected for 3 years, because that would be the 2025 election, right? And so if you waited 1 year, then it would be 4 years.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Thanks for also picking up.
So I
my
think
brainwave.
what's interesting about this too is like a lot of this, like, well, when would we have the special election and how long would a lot of this stuff happen? These dates would be articulated in your reorg plan. Like we can pick like how long, like the Department of State wants you to do this within 2 years, but we can hit our own milestones based on what we think is achievable. All of those things would be laid out in our reorg plan.
And if
it's interesting. Mayor, you're correct. You decide what date you reorganize, but your laws are on the books separately for up to 2 years. So that 2-year period you mentioned is that the laws are on the books for up to 2 years, but you'll pick a date. So as the supervisor mentioned, if you had the referendum in November, it doesn't mean you consolidate the day after. You plan for when that date is. That date may be December 31st, 24. It could be December 31st, 25.
Right, but the only thing that probably would be important to be mindful of is picking that date to consolidate and being mindful of the state budget. So we would be eligible for that first opportunity to be awarded the Citizens Empowerment Act money.
Correct. And that would just, whenever you work on that date, you would pick the date and also look at your budgeting process for the quarter year, half year budgets as you go between a village and a town. It's too early in the process to detail that out when. But yes, you are correct, Mayor. You want to get your organization done prior to March 31st of any given year.
Got it.
I think that, both boards, it seems to me that we can all agree that, everything that we heard tonight from the public is, we share your concerns. The process being impeccable is paramount to us. And making sure that everybody has a chance to understand fully what's going on, have their voices heard, have us address their concerns. You know, I don't think anybody here is in any rush to complete a process before everything has, you know, all the T's have been crossed and the I's have been dotted, and everybody feels as though we have an informed citizenry and we've engaged the public as much as possible.
And that is the beauty of the consolidation process at a board initiated level. It allows you to really involve the public, answer their questions, develop that consolidation agreement that's equal from both the town and the village. And you both have input. Everyone can ask their questions. And if you go to a referendum, both the village and the town both vote. So that's a really powerful opportunity for you to be as democratic with a small d as you can, and inclusive in the process of governance. It's an example of basically government in process. You're all elected officials to a government that you inherited. This gives you the opportunity to create the government that you wish to have.
So I feel like there is a little bit of interest in this question of, well, what problem are we trying to solve? And having sat in this role for the last 9 years, I can regale you with numerous things that I think we'd be trying to solve.
But I also think the study will also highlight some potential benefits, not in addition to potential problems. So like, I get it. I don't think any of us know the answers to what the big problems are. There are lots of problems, and I think there are lots of solutions, but I'm excited about the study because there may be benefits we don't even know about. And there may be problems that we didn't realize were as insignificant or significant, right? So I think we need to do the study.
I was just going to share a couple of examples so folks could wrap their heads around it. So, you know, one example that Neil and I have spoken about many times in the past, right, is that we have a finite amount of sewer capacity, right? We have town sewer districts, and we have other properties that it might make sense to expand Main Street so there was municipal services. But as of right now, a village would not make sense for a village to green light that very easily unless we sat down and took a hard look at a comprehensive master plan and we agreed that this is what we want to do. Like, that's a really clear opportunity as far as what we could do differently that we're not doing. And by design, the village should not extend sewer outside of the village when we should preserve the sewer capacity for the tax-paying properties within the village. And then also related to sewer capacity is we're under a consent order from the DEC. So when we have enormous rains, we have discharges from maintenance hole covers where our system gets overwhelmed and you end up with raw sewage in 5 different locations downtown that get discharged into our streets. Because, you know, when the college is here, we'll do 800,000 gallons of sewer per day. And then we can have a crazy rain day or a crazy snow melt, and you could end up with 3 million gallons per day at the sewer plant, right? So that means that the conveyance system is being overwhelmed. That means that we are in violation of our agreements with the DEC. And one of the things that we could do if we continue to stay as siloed local governments is the village could say, okay, town, you should put master meters on the entry points where the sewer leaves the town sewer districts and enters the village conveyance system. And that's a maintenance nightmare. That is a way that you could record volume, and then we could say, okay, well, this is how we're addressing I, and the town needs to take a closer look at, doing some of the stuff that the village has been doing, where like we've been fortunate in that we chased down community block development grant money to replace old sewer mains. The town is not as focused on that, and part of the reason is because the town has an individual who runs water and sewer, Chris Marks. If there's a water main break tonight, he'll go fix it. He'll respond to any emergency imaginable. But in terms of like big picture, long-term planning, that's a lot for the town water and sewer department to be asked of. We should be working holistically. We should be working collaboratively to look at this aggregate conveyance system. And we're not doing it now. Like there's an opportunity to do that very differently and address our consent order. We could be protecting this Walk-Hill River by working collaboratively. And I agree with Neil that a lot of this other stuff can be sorted out via conversations and committee work. But if anyone wants to get bored by me, I can provide a bunch of other examples.
We'll need to get like a top 99 examples list from you at some point.
Yeah.
Like one thing, that too. One thing, like to reflect kind of like Tom Denton's, comment, absolutely. This, us bringing this, up has brought us all, jointly to the table for the first time in quite some time. So that in itself is really, really exciting to me. So thanks, town, for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Anything else from electeds?
Well, I'm very curious about this and I like what I'm hearing. I love the idea that we're together as a town and village board. It's really a wonderful thing, and thank you guys for coming. It's almost like the return of the cicadas, when is the next, full eclipse? And this topic comes up about once a decade and has been for pretty much what, 100 years, 100 something years. And for myself, I'd like to look a little deeper into why that's happened, as well as starting this with a clean slate. Because there's a lot of baggage, I think, in the community about how the last time went. And we need to clear up a lot of misunderstandings and make those efforts in that direction. But as the supervisor said, and Mayor has indicated, I think it's a great thing to pursue. I just think we need to find a format that will make that work. And I think one of the formats we could try is a workshop format rather than a meeting like this, because that way we can do a little bit more give and take with people who come and are interested and want to chime in when they can, rather than be relegated to a public comment period.
Yeah.
I like the idea of a facilitator that we can Zoom.
Yeah.
We may need that.
Yeah, I think we have an opportunity here to like set up future elected officials in New Paltz for success. And I feel like I hope that in plus 10 years from now, none of us are here. And it's all new people, and we
over here.
Right. Well, I was just spitballing a number. I really feel we have a responsibility to create a path for our elected officials and our community to succeed. I feel so strongly that we have to like take a hard look, because I feel like the status quo is selling us short.
What about a steering committee?
Right. So we can figure out those next steps. I mean, as far as an action step, I would propose that we use this resolution that is basically just saying, as a town and village board, we want to take a closer look at this opportunity and apply to the the Department of State's program to get a grant award to help with this.
I make that motion for the town board.
Second?
I make the motion for the village board.
You
I'll
have a
second it.
majority?
We do. We have 3 here and 1 there. So
We only need 3.
we only need 3.
Any further discussion from, because Alex seconded it? No. Okay, all in favor of,
I,
aye.
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 So like I said, I'm excited to get the grant, and then we can have discussions based on real answers, right? I don't want to waste our time having discussions about people's fears and concerns. Like, I think it's all going to be more efficient if we get it. So thank you for getting this ball rolling.
Yeah, I think in those workshops or charrettes or those facilitator-led conversations, that's where we can, get into the nuts and bolts about like, what would a empowered planning board feel like? What improvements could we make? Something I learned from Chris the other day when we were chatting about this opportunity. Chris is our town highway superintendent. He was just like, that a village can't own a bridge. And I did not know that. And I think that is why this consolidated coterminous government is like, you're not dissolving the town, you're not dissolving the village, right? So like the town can't run a fire department, but you can have a fire department administered by a village government. So, we take advantage of the fact that a town can own a bridge, that a town can declare special districts for water and sewer. Like, these are the things that we bake into our reorg plan and really take the best of both to create this single entity. Anything else tonight, or we'll we probably, our next step is to work on an RFP and circulate it amongst the consultants. Well, I guess the first step is to see if we can get the grant money from DOS.
But I think it'd be good to get input from consultants, like what do these costs, or how is the grant a fixed amount of 100,000? Or
so it's up to 50K for the first tranche, and then it's up to 50K for the implementation plan.
Okay. So hopefully we can maybe get some rough estimates from consultants saying these probably cost. Hopefully the state is giving us enough money to fund the study.
Right. We will have to provide some local match. And part of that will be, we will figure that out based on the RFQs we get back.
All right.
Ben, so you're unaware of a board initiated referendum for a consolidated coterminous. The only one that's ever occurred was Pauling recently with a citizen initiated, right? And that was not successful.
From my understanding, that is correct. So there's been one consolidation referendum so far. That's the Village and Town of Pauling 2 years ago. The only other reorganizations that have come up for referendum were just dissolution, whereby 19 villages dissolved, 30 voted not to dissolve. But as far as consolidation goes, there's only been one study that's gone to the public for a vote, and that was Pauling 2 years ago. And that was a citizen-initiated process.
Got it. Okay.
so I just want to make sure, because there were 2 resolutions, did we have to do action on both?
We don't have to take an action on the other resolution. That's why I included the word memorializing resolution to just make it clear that like this resolution is the value of it as the paper it's printed on. It's really kind of a roadmap. It's really really for information more than anything else.
I appreciate the roadmap. I would like to do the study before we start setting out a guaranteed roadmap. Because I also think then if we put the roadmap out and people don't have all the information, it'd be like, you've already decided.
Yeah.
So I am like I said, I'm glad the resolution passed and let's get this grant.
Yeah, I was not proposing that we pass the memorializing resolution. I was just explaining that it was a roadmap and I wanted to make it super clear that it's only a roadmap, right? We don't have to pass it at all.
Just wanted-
I wasn't suggesting that we did that.
So you got to stay, we get to go.
Thank you so much for coming.
All right, thanks.
Thank you all for your time. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I'll be happy to answer any more questions that you have.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna let everyone, if you guys wanna, you can go hang out in the fire station garage if you want to chat, but you're too noisy.
Formal. Guys, what do you think, Peter? Went to Rosanna.
Yeah.
I was really sweet over the holidays.
Oh, no.
And congratulations off my brain.
Doing better?
Not much, just. Like
Everybody, if you could make your way either into the phase through that door or outside, it'd be really helpful.
Jason used to do smoke breaks.
Like,
Were the meetings that long? Is that why?
No, he likes smoke breaks.
he likes smoke, yeah.
All right, so we do have a public hearing open, and this is regarding our draft law for a change to chapter 132. This is to expand our affordable housing law. Is Jackie still here? I believe she wanted to make a comment. Hi, Jackie.
No. Do you hear me?
Yeah,
Okay, good.
thanks for sticking around.
Yeah, you bet. It was a very interesting conversation. And I will be looking forward to be part of a charrette or whatever else that you will decide a way to get public opinion. What I did hear quite a few times was this would be a better way to deal with the housing crisis. So that was really good. I'm talking on behalf of UAPT Housing Committee as usual. And we are very much in support. I wish it was 20%, Kitty, but I think the amendment is 15% for units over 20 units, for developments over 20 units. And I know it doesn't sound like a great deal to go from 10 to 15, but it is. And just take, for example, the New Paltz Apartments. If the estimate, and I think the estimate right now is about 20 affordable units at 10%. If it was 15%, if my math is correct, it would go up to 30 units. And you know what? For us here in the town and the village, that's an important addition. And it certainly should be required of these large developments. So we fully support it. We really want to applaud the Housing Committee of the village for bringing it forward. It really can be a game changer. So we're just registering our support, and we hope it'll go through. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie.
Thanks, Jackie. Anyone else want to make a comment regarding this open public hearing? So we're going to continue to keep this public hearing open. I communicated with our chair, Terry Dolan, for the Affordable Housing Board. When we first opened the public hearing, we had a good conversation with affordable housing developer Keith Leibel. He has shared some notes with Terry. I think the members of the Affordable Housing Board are going to get together, but we really want this to be like an engaged process. So they're gonna circle back with us in February. So I propose that we keep this public hearing open.
And I'll make good on my note from last meeting to actually send a letter to the editor about it. I was sick and time passed, but I'm glad we have time.
Great. I move that we adopt the consent agenda.
Once, the question about the consent agenda.
Okay, well, you want to second it and then
Yes, second.
discuss? Okay, discussion.
To see or B.
Why? Because there's a leak in the roof? Yes. Right, so this is, you know, the roof repair is probably close to $500,000. And, you know, that includes several roofs. It's a very complicated building. But it's an important next step.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, Ann Oliver House, Margaret Wade Lewis Center is looking to apply for some funding from the National Trust for Historic Preservation. The center has applied to this grantor in the past.
Correct.
And then we have a draft letter that your team put together and then Autumn massaged further. Looks like a good letter of support, but you want to share anything about this opportunity?
Sure. I just first want to say to the village board, the trustees, mayor, that it's I'm grateful. It's been an honor and pleasure to be the steward of the historic Ann Oliver House. And when I was granted stewardship, it was with the understanding to create an organization that would then take over this house to rehabilitate it and repurpose it to be the Margaret Wade Lewis Black History Cultural Center. And so that has been done. We have a very robust very hard working board that are all volunteers. We have a regular programming, Juneteenth, as well as Kwanzaa. We're in our 3rd and 4th years of having those events that are growing every year for the community to share together history and culture. And this is just another step. I secured funding from the state. And so in order to utilize that funding, this planning grant gives us increasing organizational capacity, developing a plan for financial stability, sustainability, implementing a capital fund campaign, which is necessary for us to then transfer the property from the village to the Margaret Wade Lewis Center. So it is for that reason that we are requesting the ability to apply for this grant.
You're talking about the state and municipal funding that you secured, and we received those from Hinchy's office and Cahill's office. So I think what's exciting about this, right? It's just like, you know, we keep adding these building blocks, and I feel like with every successful grant award, it makes the project seem that much more viable and important. And you know, we're hoping that that tailwind continues. I wanted to give a public shout out to Autumn Seguin, our project manager. Autumn has been behind the scenes being an amazing shepherd regarding these grant awards, and working with your team and making sure that everyone's on the same page, and including our village attorney, like, you know, because we're super motivated, just like your executive board is super motivated. And I feel like Autumn's kind of, we ask her to do a lot here at Village Hall. And this is one of those projects that she's really taken ownership of, and it's going to be a fantastic center for a bunch of reasons and a bunch of people, but especially because of Autumn's work. So I just wanted to make sure that was known broadly. So I move that we go ahead and provide that letter of support.
Second.
All in favor?
We all seconded it. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to see you all.
Yeah, really good seeing you in person.
And then our next item that I snuck into this business agenda, we're going to update from Deputy Mayor Wojcik regarding the Central Hudson rate case.
Yeah, so you might remember last year we joined the Central Hudson rate cases. There's two of them technically, but they're both the same idea. As an intervener last year, along with communities for local power and New York's public utility law project and some other municipalities in our area, and some organizations. So that means we basically have access to seeing what's going on behind the scenes. So really exciting update that litigation in the rate case began today. So this is apparently really rare, as most rate cases end up going to settlement negotiations, and those go on usually they try to come up with a deal for multiple years and they drag on. So it was exciting that, all the, folks involved were able to kind of push this to actual litigation. Central Hudson will be kept to a one-year plan, and groups in the rate case will now, they've started the cross-examination, on their proposals, projected costs, basically anything that Central Hudson has put on the table and continues to put on the table in the next 13 days. So litigation is set for 13 days, but it could be shorter. And so, yeah, Lori Wheelock, Executive Director of Public Utility Law Project, said that the organization finds this to be the absolute best way to get in there and try to cut costs as much as possible. So I'm really excited about that. So I guess stay tuned. In the next 2 weeks, we'll have some more updates. Hopefully, maybe by next meeting, I can share out another blurb.
Thanks for doing that.
Yeah.
So the next item is we have a housing board report. So our affordable housing board, per our code, is required to provide a report annually. And when Chair Terry Dolan joins us in February, I'll ask him to provide additional context regarding this report. But it's pretty straightforward stuff in that it's just providing a summary of the units that are currently available within the community that are affordable and the number of applicants. So the report is linked here in this agenda if anyone wants to take a closer look. But I'm going to wait and allow them to explain further when they join us in February. But it's the number of applicants on the eligibility propriety list is currently 115. The affordable housing stock within the village at the time of the report included 2 bedrooms at the Ridge, 3 1-bedroom at Zero Place, and 2 2-bedrooms at Zero Place.
And there's currently no vacancies for affordable housing rental units. So yeah, I think that's really interesting. 115 people on the list.
Right. Okay, next business agenda item is we have scheduled a skate park, skate garden meeting for 7 p.m. January 31 in this room. So we have a draft design, and Alex has reached out to the skate community and all the skate aficionados to come and review the design. And what we hope to do is to take next steps to identify a builder to realize this design. But you want to add anything in terms of what we hope to accomplish on the 31st?
Yeah, so just real quick, it's a week from today. Like, it's been building, for the past 4 years towards, getting towards like what we're going to be looking at next week, because all the different hopes, wishes, dreams, and then realities of like, the space, have all been taken into account with different drafts and whatnot. So I'm really hoping that people can, bring the same critical eyes, because what you need and what your friends need in this kind of space with the kind of skating that you do, or BMXing or wheelchairing or roller skating, better than any of us. And just really continue to bring that critical eye this next Wednesday and make sure, all the different things that we've discussed over the past 4 years as a community, are addressed in some way in this space. And I think people will be really excited. And, the folks at Hudson Valley Trail Works are really excited to walk us through this. It will be hybrid. So if you can't make it in person, you can hop on the Zoom. And we'll have the recording after the fact too. So come one, come all.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And the next item is related to the EFC award we received a few years ago at this point. So this was a $3 million award that the village received, and we're replacing water mains in, I think, a total of 4 or 5 different streets. So this is a big one. This is the water main on North and South Chestnut Street. And no one can even count how many water main breaks we've had on North Chestnut Street. We had one the other day. Unfortunately, this does not include looping the water main on North Chestnut to the dead end on Huguenot. That's a project that we'll continue to try to find funding for, but hopefully this will provide some improved resiliency and fewer water main breaks and disruptions for the numerous residents, as well as the Duzine Elementary School that has to close early when we have these kind of water main disruptions. So I move that we advertise for this contract on Jan 31. All in favor?
Aye.
And then the next item is we received bids. We put out an RFP for our well project. So for years, we've been working on this project where we identified 4 groundwater wells up at the water treatment plant property, including some property that we bought from the Mohawk Reserve, 2.4 acres right next to our property. So there's 4 wells that don't communicate with each other, that are ideally, or we believe are all part of different geologic features. So they're going to generate a significant amount of yield. We're going to take that groundwater and add it to our water treatment plant property, because we have a multi-million-dollar state-of-the-art treatment plant property, and we're going to take this super high-quality groundwater and treat it. Even though if that was your home, you would never need to do that. But that's, or you have to filter water per the environmental, the EPA, the federal government. So we're super excited about that, because in New Paltz, we currently buy, depending on precipitation year over year, 60% of our water from the New York City DEP. It's fairly expensive raw water. So if we can buy less water from the New York City DEP, that could improve the health of our water fund, health meaning our ability to pay down debt for projects like the project that I just said we were going to advertise so we could replace old water mains. So we also have intergovernmental agreement with the New York City DEP, where they would provide us with funding to connect some of these wells that we've found. 4 of them up at the treatment plant property, 2 of them down at Morella Pool Park. If you add up the cost to do all of these projects, it was about $3.5 million, way above the amount of money that we received or could receive from the DEP. So I've spoken with our engineers and public works staff, and we believe it would be most prudent at this time to hit pause on the Moriel Pool project because we don't want to add too much debt within our water fund. So we would hit pause and then hopefully connect the two wells that are in the Memorial Park at some point in the future when our financial situation is different, but that we will proceed with the low bid who bid on the project to connect the 4 groundwater wells up at the treatment plant property. And that's in this resolution, right? We cite the name. So it's Green Meadows is the name of the contractor. So this is a resolution where we're authorizing the acceptance of the bid for the construction of these wells. And this is a project that's been years in the making. I think it's super exciting. It's super exciting as far as a legacy of our village government to, to move one step closer to actually source water from groundwater wells, which we currently do not do at all, to augment how much we buy from the DEP and how much we source locally from precipitation that ends up in our 4 reservoirs or surface water reservoirs up next to the treatment plant property. Anyone want to second my motion?
Second.
I think this is a great plan. Yeah, what's the gallonage again up at the water treatment plant? I mean.
It's been so many years. I used to have every single thing memorized and I unfortunately don't. I think if we did all 6 wells, it would represent about 1/3 of our consumption. I think the 2 wells and our consumption is probably like 600 to 700 gallons per day. No, 600 to 700,000 gallons per day. And I think this represents about 1/3. And the 2 over at Memorial Pool Park are like 90 gallons per day. No, gallons per minute. Right. So this is less than half. But what we like about the wells up at the treatment plant property, they probably don't yield as much individually, but our anticipation is that it will be less expensive to monitor and operate them because all we're doing is we're just taking that raw water and dumping it into the plant. We're not doing any like specialized treatment. We're just putting it through our state-of-the-art filtration plant and disinfecting it.
Great.
And then we have a resolution from the board rejecting the bids.
We only had a second.
Okay, all in favor of the reservoir project? Aye. I move that we resolve to reject the bids for the Moriello Pool Park well project because it's more expensive than we anticipated.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. And then we have a note to respond to the DEP. The DEP has been working on a project to replace or update the Catskill Aqueduct. And this has been going on for many years. I've expressed concern, our engineers have expressed concern about, our staff has expressed concern about the possibility and potential of it being very disruptive where we end up with groundwater complaints or pressure spikes or issues within our conveyance system. And I don't feel like it's being adequately addressed. We're only looking at a operating procedure. And then we've received back a note from the DEP when we've said that we are concerned about this, and their response has effectively been, well, that's your local problem, suggesting that we figure it out. And I think that's a hard pill to swallow. It feels like a very hard pill to swallow, especially when we pay a substantial amount of money to buy raw water from them. It's not like, you know, it doesn't feel like a collaborative process. It feels like we're accommodating their construction schedule, their need to update their aqueduct, that we buy water from them at a very expensive rate. And we have expressed concerns about the potential that the creation of Water District 5 and how that water will be used during their shutdown periods. We just fear that it's not being addressed. And we've said that we are withholding payment from the DEP for the raw water that we buy from them until we have established an escrow of at least $500,000, because we have to pay engineers and staff to do things like put up boards to make it so that we can hold more water in a reservoir, and the engineering time to design those systems, the staff time to install those systems, our staff time to review these various plans, all related to the shutdowns. It's kind of like they have a complicated project. They ask us to spend money accommodating how we can work around their complicated project. It just does not feel very collaborative. And, because of that, it's very expensive. So we just have to approach this very differently. So I just wanted to share this note with our board and see whether our board will authorize sending of this note to the DEP. Does anyone want to second that for conversation? Conversation, discussion.
Yeah, I appreciate all the time and energy that's been put into making sure that we're made whole here, as opposed to leaving us to have to take care of everything on our own. So I definitely think that we should send this further.
Any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
I'm move that we go forward with the tax sale and the related documents that are linked here in this agenda.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. I move the tax lien foreclosure agreement with the county.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I move the resolution for bills and claims.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And any PB update we want to share? Yeah, I was there at the last meeting.
I wasn't even making.
I should have took notes.
Yeah, I go through the same thing each week.
What was discussed? Which one? Right, the proposed hotel at 184 Main Street next to the convenience deli parking lot was approved. Did they discuss 11 Water Street? That was kind of like nothing moved forward regarding that proposal, but the board was sinking their teeth into like figuring out a lot of the questions related to that project. And they had a conversation about the stormwater and how it impacts the nearby maintenance hole cover and possible solutions. It seems like they're creeping forward and the board is asking the right hard questions. We have a great planning board.
So do you think they'll make the county planning board referral? It's been sent. Great.
And we didn't have a ZBA meeting this month.
Can I share the announcements?
Oh, yeah. So
cool. So yeah, just some quick announcements. I'll skip some of them. The free food fridge is right outside our building, 25 Plattekill Avenue. It's there for everybody. Before you make donations, make sure you check out the do's and don'ts on Millions of Butterflies website. And to help all the efforts at the Free Food Fridge, next Tuesday, January 30th, there is going to be a fundraiser dance party at Snugs in the evening hours. So it will be featuring DJs playing different kinds of dance music. It's organized by Mind Church, which is a local psytrance dance organization. So thank you to that group for doing that for the Free Food Fridge. And then in February, our community has 2 opportunities to meet with constituent services caseworkers from both of our New York State representatives' offices, which is really exciting. So Assembly Member Shressa's mobile office hours will be on Thursday, February 8th from 3 until 6 p.m. at the library in the community room. And Senator Hinchy's mobile office hours will be on Thursday, February 22nd from 11 a.m. until 3 p.m. also at the library. And our website will have information on how folks can make appointments with staff for those. But basically, if you have issues that are kind of like above our pay grade, you know, like Central Hudson or utility bills problems, tenants' rights stuff that maybe stumped me, which happens every day, homeowner protection, worker compensation, unemployment, licenses of all kinds, certifications, Medicaid, SNAP, so much more. Those are reasons to make appointments with our, you know, representatives and get those face-to-face meetings in. And then I just have to shout out some Narcan stuff. So Narcan trainings are always available online at opioidpreventionnp.org.
Thanks. I also wanted to just share it publicly and remind ourselves for the next agenda that law that we had been considering where it would require buildings or effectively apartment complexes that you have to put in a master meter, a master pit reader for water, as opposed to just individual meters. I actually spoke with one of the developers who's building something on North Chestnut Street, saying that we absolutely think this is important and it will benefit them. It'll benefit us as well as our water users. But I just wanted that codified. So just, you know, because we had reviewed it as a board potentially, and I just wanted to make sure that it ends up on our next agenda so we can talk about scheduling a public hearing for it and taking next steps.
Sounds good.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?